o'clock on December 27th, 2022. This is a meeting of the Buildings and Utilities Committee. I am Mrs. Marshall, Chair of the committee, and this is Mr. Whidden. We are here to provide a recommendation that Council authorizes the Director of Public Service and Safety to submit an application to the Ohio Environmental Protection Agency for funding of purchase of pressure monitoring equipment in the water distribution system and to execute any necessary documents if funds are awarded. Mr. Titterington.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a grant opportunity that should probably stand up. Mr. Gary Evans, who is our relatively new water treatment plant superintendent, he had advised us that this grant was available on a first-come, first-served basis. This would pay for 3 portable pressure loggers, so we would be able to attach them to fire hydrants to measure water pressure, particularly in, where we want to isolate maybe a few instances of main breaks, and we want to see how the pressure is doing. $10,000. The total cost would be $11,550. We would have to somehow find $1,550 out of the water fund, which I'm sure we probably can do. So the match is very, very low compared to the opportunity. As I mentioned, it is a first-come, first-served, the application deadline being January 25th, so we are asking for emergency legislation.
I do not. Seems like a good idea.
All right. Do any other council members have any questions?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Perhaps our wastewater, or not a wastewater, our water treatment plant. I'm sorry?
There's fighting words.
Oh, sorry.
Water.
Police and fire, and wastewater, and water. If I may, is this? Don't we have a detection system now, or a pressurization detection system now in case we do have leaks? Do we have random leaks in the system that these are going to detect, or that we are?
So right now they have in Troy we have I think about 10 meters that do show pressure, but they only show look at pressure one time an hour. What these would do, they would actually look at any transient, so any water hammer, water surges that are going through the pipe. So it's literally looking at it thousands of times a second, and looking at then recording a min, max, and an average every second then. And so when we had all those main line breaks, a few weeks ago now, we could actually deploy that in that area, see if there were some surges that were actually happening there and where they're coming from, and kind of keep working back and try to isolate those. The other thing they can be utilized for is when we do have a water line break, you can install one upstream and downstream of the break, as long as you're monitoring that, and we'd have that recorded then you wouldn't have to issue a boil alert according to the Ohio EPA rules.
Well, and just trying to think ahead.
Sure.
I don't know how many water mains we have, and the potential of these devices, or how many, it may be an astronomical number, to have throughout the city to monitor that on an immediate basis. And that's why are 3 so important. These are post-event.
So you can look at it, like you can use them during the event. You can look at, try to look at them before an event happens as well, So if you start seeing, like say you have a customer that has a large solenoid valve that's opening and closing, and as it's doing that, it's creating that water hammer back on us, we can isolate that and hopefully try to get that, resolved before we have those breaks. Again, so if like you, from what you're saying, I think what I'm hearing, if you wanted to like deploy like something in an entire system permanently, that would be very costly. Like I said, the few, I think the 10 meters they have out right now, they're only looking at it once an hour and getting that back. So that gives you just kind of an idea of what's happening out in the distribution system. And even these wouldn't be a permanent installation on the fire hydrant because the fire hydrant has to be on. So we wouldn't typically use them in the wintertime except for like during a break situation. But once it was thawed out and whatnot, you could go around and then utilize those in the warmer seasons.
Right. Yeah, it's not that I'm negative towards this, and it's not that I'm negative towards this in any way, but it's just trying to think long-term whether that would be something that's even economically feasible on any...
There are sensors you can put out there, but it does just jack that price up. This was actually something that came up in one of our ops meetings that Scott Taylor was actually wanting to look at, and so when I saw this grant opportunity, like, hey, let's get the vast majority of the cost will be taken care of by the grant.
Got it. Thank you, sir.
Absolutely.
All right.
Can I follow on that? Just very quickly to understand, I think I see what you're saying, Mr. Phillips, but with there being 3, is there then, or could we come up with an optimum number of them once we try them? Does that make sense? In our system, would there be
I think we're
5
talking
would
about
be-
two different, we're talking about a scale difference here. These would be isolating potential problem areas, and you would have 3. Typically, you would deploy maybe 2, one on each side of a line or an area. If you've got a T going down an intersection road, perhaps, and maybe you'd have a third, or you'd have a third as a backup. And again, as Gary said, we would use these when we have to basically triage something. If you're talking about something permanent, you're talking more than just logging equipment. You're talking about wholesale SCADA-type monitoring through the system, whether that involves AMR-type radio monitoring every so often, or you've got a Wi-Fi or any kind of satellite technology. I mean, the sky's the limit, no pun intended, but just to put it in perspective, just to do about a 1/12 of the work that's needed to computerize the plant is about $100,000. And so you're I think we're in about the 8th year of SCADA between this and then the wastewater plant as well, but now we're concentrating on water. So those kind of costs are exponentially larger when you're talking about a permanent monitoring system.
And understanding these are transient, not talking about that would be a cost, but even the transient detecting these kinds of things. I'm just wondering, in going forward, if I'm understanding Mr. Phillips correctly, and I would also be in favor of if it turned out that we needed 5 or 6, if they are helpful in that way.
I'm sure there's a limit to the amount that we can get through the grant, but if these are successful, one thing I'll say many things about our staff, positive, but one thing that our staff is shy, and if these are working, then they might say, hey, can we put more of these in the budget, or can we get a few more of these because they'd work well.
Okay, that sounds good. Any other questions? Any audience members have any questions? All right, how do you wish to proceed?
Move forward with emergency.
All right, we will move forward. Is there anything else, Mr. Titterton?
No.
All right, then this meeting is adjourned.